Hello everyone, and welcome to a new series called Let's Make a VTuber. On this episode, we'll be making a bunny VTuber inspired by 80s fashion. The first and most important thing I did was gather references. After looking at that and taking in what the fashion styles were, there were a few design elements I wanted to keep in mind. I wanted to make sure there was big poofy hair, a poofy shirt, jacket, or whatever was adjacent to that, leg warmers, rollerblades, and bright saturated colors. But also, you can't forget the bunny elements. So besides the ears, I made sure to remember buck teeth and big eyes. In the end though, I ended up giving her a tooth gap. So, to make sure I included all of these elements, I made a quick silhouette sketch and referred back to it during the sketching process. Next stage is line art. This part took a bit longer than usual since I had to draw everything separately. Overall, I tried my best to keep the inner lines thin and the outer lines thick because I think it makes the character stand out more. It was a bit tricky to figure out how thick I should make some lines since they would go into other parts that needed to be thin. I was able to hide the thickness behind other parts, but some lines I drew ended up being weird, so I had to hide that in the rigging stage. It's a bit confusing to explain, or I'm just not explaining it very well, but don't worry too much about it. It's just something I will keep in mind for next time. For the rendering stage, I kept it simple. Mostly flat colors with simple shading. I don't normally give hair shines when rendering, so I had to mess around with the hair for a bit till I got to something that looks nice. I also made sure to add blush in these areas. And I think it really makes a difference and gives the character some life. So now onto the rigging stage. This was a lengthy process, and I would refer to the rigging series by Merrily Wufei on YouTube. I recommend the series if you want to try learning to rig as well. The first thing I started with was the head. I made a large warp deformer that included the head, hair, ears, eyes, and mouth to do a rough pass on the head angles. Then I would take each part, just the head, just the hair, just the ears, just the eyes, and made it into its own warp deformer and adjusted how they would look in the angles until everything looked correct to me. Next were the eyes. I started with the X and Y movement, then went to eye blink and eye smile. Not really much to say about this process, I just wanted to highlight that whenever the eyes move, I made sure the eyelids got pushed a little bit as well. It really adds to the realism of the movement, and I like it a lot, and it's such a small, simple thing. The last thing I did was add physics to the eyelashes whenever the character blinks. I then quickly did the head and back hair, Z, before working on the physics for the hair and eyes. For the hair, I made sure the side pieces of hair, the big piece in the middle, and the back hair had different physics parameters since they all vary in size and density. This part is a lot of trial and error and making adjustments with the parameters until you get something you're happy with. Honestly, that's a lot of the rigging process. After I was happy with the hair, I worked on the eyebrows and mouth form. I messed around with deforming the lips with either warp deformer or using the deform path tool, and in the end I found out that I like using the deform path tool a lot more. So the next thing I worked on was the body. I started by making a warp deformer that included just the chest and the waist. After I got the angles I wanted, I deformed the arms and legs to match. It's funny I say that plurally because I really only just did the left side and then reflected the deformers on the other side. Next was body Z. Not much to say about this part either, I just adjusted the angles and then adjusted the pants to make sure things looked connected still. Now onto some arm and ear physics. The arms were just simply rotating deformers, so nothing too tricky, but the ears were a different story. Despite me not separating the parts correctly, the ears were mostly fine, but the earring is mostly what I'm talking about. Throughout the process, I messed around with it a bunch of different times to try to find the best way for it to be affected by physics, but the method I ended up going with is basically attaching it to the ear physics and then manually adjusting it. I don't think it was the best way, but it works, so I'm not complaining. I also added a physics parameter for the leg to move up and down whenever the character moves from left to right. What I ended up with works, but I don't think it's the best it could be, especially with the parameters. I don't really fully get it in the physics thing, but I think that's just something I gotta practice and learn and mess around with. Now, I hope you didn't forget, because I almost did, about a character's necklaces. I quickly did the physics for that as well, and well, Not sure if I rigged them super well. I think it's just something I gotta practice with more. But with that, our character is done. How do you think she looks? I think she looks and moves pretty good. If you really like her, she is available to purchase on my Ko-fi. I also plan to make more characters and more rigs, so follow if you want to see more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!